Hey guys, this is Ms. Miner, and sorry, I got to go back a slide. This is lesson 4D, and today our goal is to be able to find the y-intercept from coordinates. Sometimes we call coordinates points, right? From coordinates or points and a slope. Okay, so last time we were talking, our last lesson, we said that finding the y-intercept from a graph is pretty easy. All I have to do is find my y-axis, and then I look and see where the line is crossing the y-axis, and there's my y-intercept. So I know right away that my y-intercept is 6. Well, here's the thing. We don't always have a graph in order to be able to find our y-intercept. And so in order to be able to find our y-intercept without a graph, we have to understand a couple of things, the kind of information that we need in order to be able to find the y-intercept. And the information that we need is a point and a slope. So in a minute, I'm going to take this graph away, but I want you to know where this information came from and where this information came from, because that's the information I'm going to provide to you starting out. I'm going to give you a slope and I'm going to give you a point, and you're going to find the y-intercept from that information. What I'm not going to give you is a graph, and so we have to be able to find the y-intercept without using the graph. Well, the slope of any line, right, just comes from 2 points on a graph. And this one is negative 2/3 because my rise was 2, my run was 3, and this is a negative or a decreasing slope. So once I know my slope, then I can just take one of my points that I use to determine my slope, and I take those two pieces of information, the slope and the point that I used to determine my slope. So I have to have a point on the line and the slope. Those are the two pieces of information that I'm going to need in order to be able to determine the y-intercept. And where it comes from is just straight off of the graph. The point comes from one of the points that I used to get my slope from the graph. And I just need one point in order to be able to find the y-intercept. These are kind of my steps that I'm going to use in order to be able to find the y-intercept from that information. We're going to talk about those steps in just a minute, but first I'm going to split this screen and we're going to go to here. What I've given you is just kind of a setup for what we're going to use in order to be able to find the y-intercept. So we have our point on the line. We have our slope. We know it. We already know that this y-intercept is going to come out as 6, but I want to show you that we can get that information even if we don't have the graph. Okay, so in a minute we're going to ignore all of this graph that's here, and we're going to use these steps over here instead to be able to find the y-intercept, because our whole goal for today is going to be able to get y-intercept from a table and from like some ordered pairs, and we can't get there until we actually figure out how we're going to get it from that information. So let's just kind of follow through here. Now you can see this starts at step 2. And so right now we're actually going to ignore the first step in our procedures for just a little bit, and then we're going to add that back in at the end. Remember that any y-intercept, and we learned this last time, any y-intercept is just the spot where x is equal to 0. And it's that spot on the y-axis where the line crosses. Okay, we already kind of know what this y-intercept is because I had to start out with a graph. In a minute, we're going to take the graph away. But step 2, the first thing we need to do is we need to pick 2 points and find the slope. Well, we already did that. I already did that for you. And so then we need to, step 3, plug the slope and one of our points that we used. Here's our point at where x is 3 and y is 4. Plug it into our equation y equals mx plus b. So you don't have to use this if you don't want. This is in your notes. I've given it to you. This is just kind of a setup that I use in order to be able to get my answer that I want. We already know my answer is going to be the equation, y equals blank x plus blank. We already know what the slope is, so we can fill that in right there. We can also fill our slope in on our work side. Our work side, we know what our slope is, negative 2/3, and so we can fill that in. This is where we're actually going to be solving this equation. And so we're going to do work over here. This is going to be the answer that we want at the end. We're going to fill in our slope and our y-intercept boxes. We're going to know what those are at the end. So in order to do the work, I have to fill in all the other information on the work side over here that I already know. And I am using my slope-intercept equation, y equals mx plus b. And what I want to fill in is every ordered pair is an x value and a y value. And so those are 2 more values that I can fill in over here. I know that that x value and that y value fall right on this line. And so I can use them as x value and y values in my equation. What I don't know is this number over here. So I have to solve this equation to get b by itself. And I do that with my regular old equation solving steps. Remember, my equation solving steps are get rid of any extra letters that you have. I call those my extra x's or my extra variables. Get rid of any extra hostages. And divide by any numbers that are connected. This is an add or a subtract. This is an add or a subtract. Oh, sorry. This is a divide. Okay, so what I have to do over here is I kind of have to solve this equation that I've set up over here. I want to get b by itself on one side. I better add one more step in here because remember, the first thing I always want to do is simplify. So I want to multiply these 2 numbers together. But remember, if I'm multiplying a whole number by a fraction, these are going to cancel. And so I'm going to get negative 2 plus b is equal to 4. Okay, I don't have any extra variables here. I just have the v. I've already simplified, so I can go ahead and get rid of my extra hostage. The b is here. My extra hostage is the negative 2, so I'm going to add 2 to both sides. And this is going to go to 0. B is going to be equal to 6. Isn't that what we said our y-intercept should be? Yeah. So I can use this idea of just solving equations to help me figure out what my y-intercept is. And so my answer is my equation, y equals negative 2/3 x plus 6. And that is the equation for this line right here. And here's the thing. It might seem really stupid to do all of this work when we have this graph right here in front of us. But what if we don't have the graph, right? What if all we have is some data about our line? What if all we know is a point and a slope, right? Here's my point on the line. Here's my slope. I need to get an equation from it. I need a slope and I need a y-intercept. Well, I can use this idea over here of answer worksheet. This is just a worksheet. If you don't like it, you don't have to use it, but I kind of like having it all set up for me, so I just have to fill it in. Well, this one I've already given you your slope. It's -3. I already told you that part of the equation. So I can already fill this part in. Oops, sorry. That's all the parts that I know so far. I know the m value. It's the slope. It's right here. Ms. Miner gave it to you. Here is x and y. And this is just a point on the line that I probably used in order to figure out what the slope was. So I can fill in my x and y values, 1 and 4, in order to be able to solve b. Step 3 says, plug the slope and one of your x, y values into y equals mx plus b. Step 4 says, find b by solving the equation. So the first thing I have to do is simplify. Remember, these two are always multiplying each other. -3 times 1 is -3 plus b equals 4. Here's my rewrite. And then this part should be really simple, right? Here's my line. I add 3 to both sides to get rid of my extra hostage. This goes to 0, and b is equal to 7. That's my answer. Y equals -3x plus 7. I know my slope. I know my y-intercept. Okay, let's try it again. This time I'm going to make this be big, and we're going to work on this one more time. Okay, I know my slope. My slope is m, and I know my x and y values, and I always go in and I label everything. In fact, we can even label these down here. And then I set up my workspace. Now, if you don't have your workspace here, you can set it up on your own. Write in blank equals blank y equals m x plus b. And then you can fill in what you know, right? All on your own, and then solve it. I just gave this to you as a setup so that you could fill in the information in your notes. But this is what I want. My answer is going to look like this. It's going to be y equals mx plus b, but I'm going to fill in a number for my slope and y-intercept. I already know my slope. It's 3, right? So that part's already been solved for me. Over here, I can fill in my slope where it goes because I need it to do my work. Then I need to fill it in with my x value and my y value. And remember, these two are always timesing each other. What I need to find is my y-intercept, or my b value. I don't know that yet. So I'm going to simplify here by multiplying those together. And then I'm going to solve. 9 is positive, so I need to subtract 9 from both sides. This is going to go to 0, and b is equal to -7. I put that in my answer box, and now I know my slope and my y-intercept. So here is the rules, okay? What I need to do first, right, if I'm given a table, let's say, and this has just a bunch of y values. The first thing that I need to do is check and see if there's a 0 in the x place. Because remember, my y-intercept is always where x is equal to 0. So in this case, I already know my y-intercept is going to be 6. There's my y-intercept. If I have a 0 in the x box, I already know my y-intercept. That's the easiest. So step 1 is just check to see if there's a 0 in the x column. If there is, that's my y-intercept. If I don't have that, though, the next thing I need to do is pick 2 points and find the slope. So remember, finding the slope from a table is really easy. I just pick 2 points and I figure out how much did it change in my y values, how much did it change in my x values, and then I put my rise over my run. -2 over 1 or -2. There's my slope. Then, once I know my slope, all I need is one of the points that I used in order to be able to find my slope. This one is -2 and 10, and I need to plug it into my y equals mx plus b. Let's split this screen again. I'll use this workspace, right? So if I have a table, I know how to find the slope from a table. In this case, our slope was -2. And then our point that we chose, x was -2, y was 10. So we can solve for b. We already have our slope. We know it's -2. Okay, let's go ahead and solve for b. This is always multiplying. So that's going to be 4 plus b is equal to 10. If I solve this, then b is equal to 6. And we said that's what our y-intercept should be. So I can kind of do my work and get my answer that way. From a table, if I don't have my slope already given to me, I can find it from the table. We can't forget that we already know how to do that. Then I just plug it into my equation, y equals mx plus b. I take one of the points that I used to find my slope, and then I find b from solving the equation. And my equation solving steps are just exactly the same equation solving steps that we've used this whole time. All right. The last thing that we have to do then, let's make this big again, is find the y-intercept from 2 points. So now I don't have a table. I don't have a slope already given to me. So the first thing that I'm going to do, remember step 1 was just look and see if any of these x values are 0. And I always label x and y on my points so that it forces me to take a look at those x values. If one of those x values would be 0, then that would be my y-intercept. So I always want to check first because it's really easy to find my y-intercept if one of those x values is 0. Okay, so I have 2 points, right? I need to figure out what the slope is. So the first thing that I do is I take my 2 points and I create a little data table out of them. And then I find the change in my y values. That's my rise. Remember, my y-axis is the one that's rising up. My x-axis is the one that runs across. And so my change in my y values here is -6. 9 minus 6 gives me 3. And over here, -5 to 1 is plus 6. 6 minus 5 is 1, or -5 plus 6 is 1. Okay, so now I have my rise and run. I can figure out my slope. -6 over 6 gives me -1. So now I know my slope, and I can fill that in all the appropriate places in my workspace. Once I have my slope, then I just pick one of these points in order to be able to fill in an x and y value here. What I need to know is b. So I just simplify and solve. This goes to 0, and b is equal to 4. I hope this is starting to come together for you now. Here's my slope. Here's my y-intercept. I could also write my y-intercept as 0, 4 right? That is its ordered pair. But for right now, we're wanting to start to make those connections to our equation and those numbers that are the slope, the per and the phi, the slope and the y-intercept. Okay, let's do another one. This is really great practice, and I know this is a tricky operation. Like, there's a lot of steps here and a lot of kind of new things that I have to remember to do. And so I want to make sure that we have a lot of models here that we can use. The first thing Ms. Miner always does is label, right? Label those X and Y's so that when I put them on my table, I know exactly where they go. Okay, now this one, it looks like maybe that almost might be a y-intercept, but remember my y-intercept is always where x is 0 and not where y is 0. So that one's not going to be my y-intercept. So I'm just going to put that on the table, and I'm going to find my slope. I'm going to find my rise first. So -1 to 0 is adding 1, and 1 to 2 is adding 1. And so my rise over my run is going to be 1 over 1, which is just a 1. So that's my slope. That's what I'm going to put in here. And then I'm going to pick one of the points that I just used to find my slope, and I'm going to put my x value in here. I'm going to put my y value in there, and I'm going to solve for my y-intercept, the part that I don't know. 2 times 1 is 2, plus b is equal to 0. Here's my equal sign. I got to subtract 2 from both sides. B is equal to -2. There's my equation. There's my y-intercept, right? Where x is 0, y is -2. That's the point on the graph that it would be my y-intercept. All right, here's one from a table. Great idea would be pause the video right here and see if you can find the y-intercept from this table all on your own. Okay, I hope you paused the video and did some work on your own. We're going to go over a couple more examples before we move on. Remember, the first thing that I always need to find from the table is a point and a slope. So let's start by finding the slope. I'm going to find the rise and the run by finding out how much did it rise up. Well, it increased by 4 in my y value, so that's my rise. And then how much did it run over? Well, it decreased by 2 over here. -2 minus 2 gives me the -4. So my slope is going to be 4 over -2, which is just -2. There's my slope. So I can fill that in all the appropriate places in my workspace. Then I'm going to pick one of the points that I just used to find my slope and put that into here in my equation. I'm solving for b. This is always multiply. And so -2 times 2 gives me +4. And so I solve for b. -4 from both sides. This goes to 0. B is equal to 6. There's my y-intercept. And there's my answer. So there we go. There's y-intercept. I hope you paused the video and tried this on your own and then used my work to check yours and see how you're doing. Same thing here. Here's another example from a table. We're going to skip ahead just in the, oh, that was the last one. Maybe we're not skipping ahead. I'm so sorry. Let's do this last one then. Pause the video and try it on your own. Then come back and check your work. Okay, I hope you checked your work, or I hope you did your own work. I hope you paused the video. This is going to be our rise over here. We're going to figure out what our rise is because our y-axis or our y values tell us how much we moved up. And then this is going to be our run over here, and it's going to tell us how much I ran across. So our rise, 6 to 4 is -2, and then 1 to 2 is adding 1. So my rise is -2, my run is 1, and so my slope is -2. Then I need to take one of the points that I just used to find my slope, and I need to put my x value here for x and my y value here for y, and solve for b. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2 plus b is equal to 6. Add 2 to both sides to get rid of my extra hostage. This is going to go to 0. And 8 is going to equal b. There is my y-intercept. Okay, if you need some more practice problems or you have any extra questions or need any more clarification, make sure you check in with me or Mrs. Zeider. Send us an email or join us for one of our Google Meets. We're always happy to help. Good luck, guys.